Donald Trump's trade threats still loom over Canada this week, and the Prime Minister is warning the President's annexation talk is real and needs to be taken seriously. This has pushed Ottawa and the provinces to talk about trade within Canada. I spoke to the Minister of Transport and Internal Trade, Anita, about that. Minister Anita, nice to see you again.
Great to be here, Rosie.
I want to talk about interprovincial trade. Seriously, do want to talk about it, but want to start, if I can, with something that the Prime Minister said on Friday to that group of people that he gathered to discuss Donald Trump, and that is suggesting that it is a real thing when President Trump is talking about economically absorbing Canada. You also responded to those comments. Why are you so convinced that this is a real thing and that we need to take this very seriously?
So we have to take the threat of 25% tariffs and all of the approaches that the White House is making extremely seriously. And this particular point in time is no different. I think the more important point, Rosie, is that at all the tables I have been at, whether it's labor leaders, government leaders, business leaders, right here in my own constituency of Oakville, the sentiment is unified and clear. There will be no messing around with the 49th parallel. Canadian sovereignty is secure and will remain secure, and we will all be united in defending it.
Okay, let me move on to the pieces that you are really focused on here in terms of helping the country through what could be, a serious economic crisis. Interprovincial trade barriers, you have said they could be removed in 30 days. That to me is shocking because I think I've been covering this for decades. There's a little progress, but there's never been the kind of progress that you're talking about. How would you do it? How would you get rid of this in a month?
Let me tell you, Rosie, that it has never been more clear that there is unity around the table relating to the need to reduce and eliminate interprovincial barriers to trade. That means ministers who are responsible. I met with them last Friday, and everybody is on the same page about three items. One, we need mutual recognition of rules across the country so that if you're a trucker, you don't have to comply with 13 different sets of regulations, for example. We already have a trucking pilot underway, and the country is united that we need to expand mutual recognition. Recommendation number 2 relates to the exceptions in the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, reducing those exceptions. And that means the federal government too. We're going to reduce our exceptions significantly, including in the areas of procurement and financial services. And then thirdly, labor mobility, a huge issue for us all, where we want to be able to see workers, regardless of profession, travel where demand is. And so there's unity on the need to work on making labor more mobile across the country.
You and others have said that if this is done, it could mean $200 billion more for the domestic economy. I think that's the number. Where would that come from? Just explain to us how where is this money suddenly appearing from? How would we get that additional revenue flowing across the country?
We're talking about greater efficiencies and the cutting of red tape for businesses so that they can direct their money, their revenue to the highest use. Right. Over $530 billion worth of goods and services move across provincial and territorial borders every single year. That's almost 20% of Canada's GDP. So what we're saying is that amount is going to increase. Our GDP is going to increase as we reduce these interprovincial barriers to trade and commerce in goods and services.
In 2017, as you know, there was a Canadian Free Trade Agreement reached between Ottawa and all the provinces and territories except for Nunavut. It took down some of the barriers, but people were kind of critical because it didn't get as far as people wanted. One of the issues, I'll just name one of them, is alcohol. Again, not being able to sell alcohol across the country. It is a significant one. So what's your understanding about whether you can really get there this time?
So we know what the end state must be. premiers and ministers are all in agreement, and the business community is right there with us about the need to keep reducing these barriers to trade through mutual recognition. Right. Our possibility now, the potential now, is vast because we need to have one Canadian economy, not 13 separate Canadian economies. That's going to mean working throughout sectors to ensure that we have a freer movement of goods and services in our own country without going through Donald Trump at all.
Obviously, this would be helpful, as we've just pointed to some of the numbers that it would generate, but it wouldn't be enough to counter a 25% tariff on American goods. Like that wouldn't save us economically. Is that fair to say?
This is an initiative that we must pursue regardless. We are going to address whatever eventuality comes from the White House in a month, in a year, or in 4 years. But in our own federation, where the economic potential is so vast, we need to do what is possible to have free trade in our own country. We also need to diversify our supply chains outside of Canada and not rely so heavily on the United States, where 80% of our trade occurs. Let's use our natural resources and critical minerals, for example, to leverage our ability, diversify our supply chains with other markets so that we are never in a vulnerable situation again.
Let me end on this. How are you? How surprised are you that we are in this place where we are, and how would you characterize this moment for this country?
This is the critical moment of our time. It is a time when the national unity that we are seeing across this country, the need and the desire to buy Canadian, support Canada, has never been more strong. And there's a reason, because each and every one of us wants Canada to remain strong and free, and we are prepared to do whatever it takes to ensure that occurs. And you're going to see those barriers to trade be reduced. You're going to see Canadian supply chains diversified, and you're going to see the Canadian economy continue to grow, Rosie. And there is no question in my mind that this is the moment that we have to seize together.
Okay, Minister, thank you for your time. We'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Take good care.
Speaking of Buy Canadian, there are stores now that are trying to put some of those displays up and feature Canadian products, even as some consumers decide to boycott U.S. products. One of the people doing that, Marilyn Dibb, is the operation manager for the independent supermarket Cedar & Co., and she joins me from Ottawa this morning. Nice to see you this morning, Marilyn.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
So what has it been like in your store? Have you noticed people looking for Canadian products?
Yes, a vast amount of people are only purchasing made in Canada products.
Wow. And so what are you doing as a store to try and help them?
So we are trying to navigate by showing them what we have in the store that is Canadian, and a good 80% of my store is Canadian. We do, however, have some produce that is from the United States because we are unable to retrieve some right now in Canada due to the fact that we don't have them in our greenhouses at this time due to weather.
So that's pretty remarkable that you already have so many Canadian products. Is it difficult to find Canadian products for most of what you sell?
It actually isn't difficult. We went through this in 2020, and we had to transition quite rapidly, especially when our borders were locked down.
Okay, and so the things that you have that are American made, have you noticed whether people are choosing not to buy them in that case, boycotting essentially?
They are completely boycotting the American-made product.
Wow. And so how do they tell the difference? Are there stickers on things? How do you suggest consumers get that information?
Once the tariff decision came out and we heard President Trump say that it was going to come across the board, clients were equally frustrated, concerned, and heightened with their stress levels, saying, we can't buy American anymore. What are we going to do? So we decided to allocate labels in front of each designated item to indicate whether they are made in Canada or abroad.
Wow, that was smart thinking on your part. The tariffs themselves, so we're on this pause right now, this pause period. Tell me what it would mean, though, if the tariffs get put in place and then the Canadian government retaliates and puts counter tariffs in place, which would also impact people in this country.
I believe that we have to focus right now on the tariffs that we are being impacted with in our homeland. The 25% tariff right across the board, especially on grocery items that had already increased post-2020 after the pandemic, was a hard hit for both grocers, distributors, suppliers, retailers all across Canada. So we had to basically work together in order to keep our bottom line down for everyone.
Yeah.
Now, to demonstrate this right across the board, all across Canada, between our lumber and other things, has a huge impact as well. So that is something that I'm really hopeful that our regions are going to tie in together and work together.
Yeah. What do you think is the likelihood that we avoid the tariffs, Marilyn?
I don't think that we can avoid the tariffs. I think that we need to demonstrate a level playing field here, that America needs to understand that Canada is a sovereign country and we are a resilient one and we can stand on our own.
Okay, Marilyn Dibb, thank you so much for making the time this morning. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, have a great day.